Welcome to another episode of Stitching Tales, a podcast about sewing and of course what it's really like to run a sewing business. My name is Johanna Lundström.
My name is Malena Hjerpe.
And in today's episode we're going to talk about a very hot topic I realized, and that is how do you add pockets to a garment or a sewing pattern that lacks one. And this is actually very relevant, especially here in Sweden, and I'm pretty curious to see if what's the status in other countries, because for background here in Sweden, for security reasons, you are no longer allowed to bring any type of bags, not even small bags to fit your keys and your mobile phone into concert and similar events. Similar if you go to a museum, you have to check in your bag. And as we all know, Malena, historically, women's garment in particular has not been well served with pockets, because you're supposed to have this little cute handbag, right? So why is that, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the conspiracy theorist says that the handbag industry doesn't want pockets because they want to sell more handbags. But I also think it's more simple fact that, I mean, trousers, for example, to have pockets on and like not patch pockets, but like properly like pocket bags inside the trousers on a tight fitted trousers. It's gonna be bulky. It's gonna be, I mean, you don't have room, basically. I mean, it's gonna show through. The pocket bag is gonna show through as well. So it's not gonna look as nice. And also, there are usually, I mean, not on all sizes, but usually the pattern pieces are smaller for women as well compared to men's patterns. And to be able to fit in a big pocket there, it is tricky to do it. And on some skirt dresses, the pocket might actually change the drape a little bit. On an A-line skirt, if you have side pockets, the pocket bag might actually start to stand out a little bit as well. So it's it requires also a little bit of the right garment to have pockets. But don't get me wrong, I love pockets. We all need them. I mean, they are amazing. One thing that I do had a challenge with when I worked with what do you call it? A brand, a garment brand here that they have the design. The design is exactly the same for women's wear and men's wear, but obviously the fitting is different. So I made always two different patterns. But then to be able to fit in those big pockets, because the pockets were required to, like, you should be able to have your latest iPhone, which they are humongous.
They're massive. I mean, they're massive. They're almost like 2 decimeters long. I'm holding up my phone. It's like almost as long as my head. I mean, it's crazy. Yeah.
And now we are talking about tight garments because it was an activewear, sportswear brand. And to be able to get those big pocket bag on, especially the smaller sizes on women's wear, I was like, it's tricky sometimes. So there are numerous of reasons why women's wear have had all these pockets, unfortunately.
Yeah. And I agree with you on that. So I don't think there's a very clear answer or a clear conspiracy as well. And of course, we have also had a larger handbag culture, I think, among a lot of female identifying persons. So I guess that also has, because otherwise you would think that, so it seems that the fashion and fit is a stronger force than functionality. So for instance, as you described, I mean, if you add pockets to a pair of really skinny fitting pants, for instance, in a very stretchy material, every little thing's gonna show through. So you will probably see 4 back pockets. That's quite common. 4 welt pockets on pants made for female identifying persons on the back, but they don't actually have a pocket pouch, so you cannot use it for anything.
It's just the design details, because the back will look too empty if it doesn't have anything, so you just add those fake welt pocket just for details. And also, I mean, fashion industry is so price sensitive. So this is a way also of getting the garment cheaper, unfortunately.
Right.
It's going to add a lot of costs to make proper welt pockets at the back. So you just make fake ones to, make it cheaper, basically, unfortunately.
Yeah. And again, of course, if you would do front pockets, like inseams pockets, especially if the fabric on the trousers is a little bit lighter, you will see even the pocket lining will shine through and create this not really beautiful silhouette on your thighs. So that's also a problem as well. The combination of something tight fitting made with thinner fabric. Whereas if you... stretch jeans is very common and they can also be super skinny, but then you have the front pockets, but because the fabric is a little bit thicker, on the thicker side, the issue will not be the same. Also, you don't have the same type of expectations on a very smooth line or on jeans than you have perhaps on dressier pants. But someone actually, speaking about that, it was actually someone asked me about what's the deal about the front pockets on jeans for females? Because again, they're very shallow. There's no space for a foot-long mobile phone in those. So we will have half the cell phone sticking out from the pocket. So Malena, why do you think that the front pockets are so short on female garments?
Again, it's a little less fabric use, but also if you have a tight, skinny jeans, tight pair of jeans, those pockets are mostly for show as well. Like, you're not able to fit in your hands. Like, how? Like, it's not going to be comfortable if you. How are you going to wear a phone inside that? Even if the pocket bag were big enough, how would you wear your phone in that pocket? It's gonna it's gonna look really weird on a skinny, like that kind of a silhouette trousers. So no, it's those kind of trousers are maybe not made to wear lots of things in your pockets. A looser silhouette, then it's no problem because it's not going to show through as much. But you will see everything you have in your pockets if you have a tight silhouette. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Unfortunately, yeah. So you would think, speaking of this kind of trend forecasting that I just made, that there's a bigger need for pockets on female garments due to the fact that there's a lot of restrictions around bags, and of course there's a utility perspective. You would think that fashion would follow, but when we talked about this before we start recording, Malena, you haven't really spotted this when it comes to pattern making from the brands that you work with.
Yes and no. It's not like we always obviously want to have pockets on everything, but it really depends on the style if you need it. I have seen the cargo trousers trend. Is it big now, or was it just like a quick thing a year ago, a couple of years ago? I grew up in the 90s, so I've lived in my cargo pants. I loved them. I'm not ready for them to come back. But those had pockets. Those you could actually use because they were, the design of the pockets were also a little bit different. They were like on top of the trousers, and they had also these pleats that they could actually be a little bit 3D, so you could actually wear things in them as well, because the pocket back, because of the pleat, they gave extra shape, extra width. So but I don't know, are cargo pants, are they a thing?
I wish I knew, because I was trying to, because we're going to do an episode before fall here about trend forecasting. I watched, I bought a magazine with the fashion runways. I didn't see much cargo pants, but I guess on the streets maybe it's still a thing, and it's, as you say, it's so much utility, and so there's a big connection between the ease of the fabric and the ease of the pattern and the fabric, and the possibility of adding pockets. Again, cargos are very suitable for that. But I try to think about people in my age. They have not. I guess younger kids maybe do it. I don't see cargo pants on people in my age, in the 40s or 50s. I've not really seen that trend take off, but it makes a lot of sense for sure. Especially now, where you would need all the pockets you could get.
Absolutely. So, and on jackets, for example, it's so much easier to because that usually have more ease to it. Is like it's a lot bigger compared to your body measurements. So then it's a lot easier to add on pockets as well. So tight trousers, it's gonna be tricky add big pockets. But I mean, it really depends on what kind of style you have, and you can always try to add pockets to the pattern and design. The beauty about sewing, you can make it your own, so you can obviously choose yourself how you want to do it.
Exactly, and that's what we're going to talk about in this episode. So, for instance, if you are making a dress pattern, and a lot of dress patterns, they do not have pockets. I mean, it becomes a little bit more prevalent, but still a lot of dresses do not have pockets, and that goes for some skirts as well. So, Malena, what would be your suggestions if you have a dress and you want to add pockets to it? So what's the first thing to think about?
Yeah, I mean, if it is a dress that has a little bit more a fuller skirt, like the what do you say? It's not like
A-line
a
or
tight fitted skirt now. Yeah, a little bit more A-line or even wider, like a half circular skirt or something similar like that.
Or gathers, or maybe pleated gathers, so it has...
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there is no problem at all to add pockets into the side seam. One thing to keep in mind is that the grain line of the pocket. And well, first, how do you draw a pocket? Well, basically, you can measure, like, first of all on the pattern, where do you want to place it? Usually it's a little bit, a couple of centimeters, inches below the waist in the side seam. And then you want to basically measure your hand width. Like, how wide is your hand? How wide do the opening need to be for you to comfortably put in your hands into the pockets? And then you have the opening measurements. Basically, you mark these with notches on the pattern, so you know how big the opening is going to be. The actual pocket bag, you want probably to start and end a couple of centimeters, an inch or something above and below that. So the pocket bag is not actually as wide as just the opening. It's a little bit more space at the top and the bottom. Just so it's a little bit easier when you sew the side seam that it's going to be enclosed in that seam. And you put your hand on the skirt pattern or whatever and draw how big you want the pocket bag to be, just so you know that you will be able to have your hands comfortably on your in your pockets. Or you can take pockets from another pattern and use that as a reference. I mean, there is no like, this is how a pocket bag should look like. Like it can really depend on what kind of style you want and what shape you want, how big, small you want it to be. But usually, I mean, just draw around your hand, then you have a pretty decent sized pocket, I would say.
That's a very good idea.
If you sew a skirt that has a little bit more volume at the bottom, then probably the side seam is quite slanting, so you cut them maybe not completely on the bias, but almost something. When you sew that side seam, depending on the fabric, it might be stretched out a little bit easier compared to if you sew along the grain line. So just be careful here when you sew the pockets, because so the opening is not stretched out. You might want to use some fusible interfacing, something on the pocket opening, just to stabilize it a little bit. Or you might also change the grain line on the pocket bag so the opening is cut along the grain line. Then that fabric will help prevent it from being stretched out. So then the pocket bag and the skirt will actually have slightly different grain line angles. It's fine if you have the pockets like completely in your side seam, then you won't be able to see the pocket bags actually when you wear it. If the pocket bag is visible, like you have slanted pocket openings or something, like you will see part of the pocket bag, then it's more recommended to have the grain line exactly the same as on the trousers or skirt and the pocket bag, because otherwise it might look a little bit like its pocket bag is shifting slightly. So just be like, there is not like one, you should always do it like this with the grain line. It depends a little bit on the pocket bag and on the fabric and on the type of pocket you are using, or the type of garment, I would say. But in this way you can use it for your benefit. If it is slanted side seam, you can have the pocket bag opening on grain line instead to prevent it from being stretched out.
That's a really great tip, because again, you do need some type of stabilizer, I would think, especially if you sewing, adding pockets to knitted fabrics or very like softer cotton fabrics, because it's fascinating how much stretch a rigid woven gets when it's cut on the grain line, especially if the fabric is on the thinner side.
And it has really bad recovery, unfortunately. Also, if it is stretched out, it's really difficult to get it back again. You might be able to do it with the steam when you iron it, but it might have been stretched out forever, unfortunately.
Yeah. So if you have to do that, you could also look into stay stitching, which means that you sew a straight stitch where you try to keep the fabric in check, and then you just place that pattern, the cut fabric piece on your top of your sewing pattern, just to make sure that the opening is still the same. With that straight stay stitching, then you will usually be able to prevent it. So that's another option as well if you don't want to interface. I'm also curious what you think, because another option is to, if you have enough fabric, which I guess you would never do in the garment industry, but if you're home sewing, you could just extend the pocket bag on the actual sewing pattern when you're making inseam. So what you do is that you just add and shape the pocket, just like Malena explained, making sure that it's deep enough and that the pocket opening is wide enough to fit in your hand, but you do not add separate lining pieces. Instead, it's just an extension, one front and one back, and those are exactly the same, and then you just sew it open. So do you see any pros or cons with using that method instead of using separate pocket bags that you attach to the sides?
Yeah, I've actually not thought about it that way, to be honest. I mean, yeah, sounds like a good idea. The only thing I would be a little bit careful with is that the pocket opening in that case would basically just be folded. And when you are sewing, if you would be sewing it instead, the seams would actually give it a little bit more stability.
Right.
So it might actually be quite easily stretched out if it's just folded. I mean, you could prevent this by adding a strip of fusible interfacing and maybe just stitch it down like a visible stitching. You could get around it. But yeah, I mean, yeah, I think it would be less stable, the pocket opening, and it might be stretched out. That's the only concern that I have. But then again, it depends on the grain line, the angle, and also what type of fabric it's actually going to be in.
So you can look into that option as well, and I've done it several times, and I've also had sewing patterns that had this construction, and to me, I think the benefits outweigh if you're not you have fabric to waste, basically, because it adds it's such a chunky part, it adds maybe, I mean, at least 5 to more inches width, and just that separate piece. So of course it's going to eat up way more fabric than you would do. So if you want to save fabric, it's probably not a great idea, but if you have the extra fabric, but I agree with you, Malena, you need to stabilize it, especially if the fabric has a little bit of a give. You definitely need to use some type of interfacing on the seams. And I think the biggest pro otherwise is, of course, first you save a little bit of time, and also you reduce a little bit of bulk in the seam area, which is a pro and a con, because the seam also adds stability, as you say. So those are, I would say, both these methods work well. And I'm also curious, Malena, what you would say, because the method I mentioned, of course, uses the same fabric, obviously, because the pocket is just an extension of the garment. But what would be the pros and cons of using maybe a separate fabric? For instance, when you look into a lot of fabric garments that you buy that are ready to wear, you will see that even on side seam, inseams pockets, I mean, or side seam, they are usually made with a slightly lighter fabric. And why is that? And is that something we should do as home service as well, or is it better to use garment fabric?
Yeah, the biggest reason I would say is it reduces bulk if it is a thicker fabric. Usually you have, if you have even if you have pocket just in the side seam or a slanted pocket, you have like a pocket shield, it's called, that is in the actual shell fabric, and then the pocket bag is in a lining fabric. And this is just to make it look prettier. You will see the actual fabric when you open up the pocket a little bit. It is a cost, of course. Usually the pocket bag is a cheaper fabric, is a thinner fabric. But I would say the most, like the biggest reason is actually to avoid it being too bulky. If you have linen trousers, then no, I would definitely use the same pocket. But if, for example, you have a pair of joggers and you're using a sweatshirt fabric, then I on the Fieldfare joggers that I have the inner pocket bag is in shell fabric, or I don't remember how I did it now, if I explain this as a tip or an option, or if I actually like say this is how you should do it. I don't remember now. But the inner pocket, there are slanted pockets on it, so the inner pocket bag is in shell fabric like a sweatshirt, because you will see that a little bit because of the slanted pocket. But the outer pocket bag that is not visible, then I recommend that you can use like a thinner single jersey fabric. I mean, it's kind of similar. It has to have kind of similar stretch and recovery, because otherwise it's going to be two conflicting fabrics. But a thinner fabric I would use just to create less bulk, because otherwise on that place it would be like 3 thick sweatshirt fabric. I mean, that will be quite a lot of fabric. So it's mainly to reduce bulk. But just make sure, especially if you have stretchier fabrics, that all fabrics behave in the same way, so that one fabric does not shrink more than the other or stretch it out a lot less compared to the other one, just so you're not going to feel a difference from the shell fabric compared to the pocket bag fabric. And on trousers and I mean, you said you are using shirt fabric actually for your pocket bags.
Yeah,
and usually not
do
100%
that,
cotton.
No, there's usually a poly cotton mix, like poplin.
Yeah, because that will make it so much more durable. 100% cotton could easily be worn out after a while if you're using the pockets a lot, and there's a lot of friction there. So here the synthetic mix will actually make it stronger, so it won't be holes in your pockets after a while. So for the pocket bags, you can actually use a little bit more like slinky fabric, like more slippery fabric. So usually they can be like 100% cotton, or no, 100% polyester or acetate or something that is like really slippery. So then it won't be, there won't be any friction between the pocket bags and the actual fabrics. If you use cotton on both of them, I mean, they will get stuck in each other and it will just be uncomfortable basically. But pocket bags, I mean, here it's a great way to use scrap fabrics, or to use, you can have it as a pop color or whatever, a little bit fun treat on the inside. So you can you can do a little bit what you want here. To be honest, just make sure that that they won't get caught in each other. Like you can rub the fabric against each other a little bit also to see how they will behave.
That's such a great tip, and I haven't really thought about that, but I know what you mean, because when you have had that happen, it's very kind of annoying, and I guess that also makes sense why you have to have, it's nice to have that kind of slippery fabric. And again, as you mentioned, also durability is a factor as well. So some lining fabrics that you can maybe line, like those cheap lining fabrics that you can maybe line a skirt or a dress, sometimes they are not as durable. So there are usually a version that is slightly thicker that is a bit more suited for pocket lining. Also, it tends to wrinkle less because some of those acetate blends tends to wrinkle like crazy when washed. So again, it kind of get a little bit distorted. And I love you brought up those points that you can use fabric scraps. So it's a good reason to save fabric scraps. And I have also used like quilting cotton. That's also great because it's a pretty decent stability or durability, and it's such a beautiful prints. As you mentioned, I like to use shirting. So in my case, I buy like old worn out shirts in secondhand shops and use that and I find that super durable. And I, just like you mentioned with your Fieldfare joggers for my Vida knit pants, I've used a similar method where I have it's also slanted pockets. I have front pockets. I have the self fabric or the Ponte di Roma on the lower part where you see through, and then on the upper part I use all cotton t-shirts or 100% cotton jersey, because again it has stability. So I would not use a stretchy lycra fabric, for instance, if because again you want the properties to have, they should be lighter, but as you say, have the similar type of stability. So if you're using sweatshirt fabric and sewing Malena's Fieldfare joggers, don't use a very lightweight, flimsy cotton knit or a rayon knit.
No, you want to have it a little bit of stability, just so it stays in place. Yeah, definitely.
I think those are very important things too, and that's kind of where you have to live and learn. And sometimes the pattern instruction doesn't really tell, especially if you do not have a pattern for your pockets. These are definitely knowledge that is very good to have. And you also mentioned we talked about slanted front pockets, where we have both on our trouser patterns, both on your Fieldfare joggers and on my Vida pants. And I'm holding up now a pair of woven pants from Uniqlo, which also have slanted pockets. Just to demonstrate what you're talking about here, Malena, is the fact that here they use the combination. So if you watch the video version, which I highly recommend now, you will see that the inner pocket, the lower part of the pocket, has the same fabric as the trousers. But if I open up the pocket opening, you will see that a couple of centimeters or an inch in, that fabric ends, which is the facing part. And then it's a very lightweight synthetic polyester, I think, lining. So when you wear the pants, you will not see the lining, but it reduces the bulk. And the same is from the upper part of the pocket, the upper slant. They've also added maybe I think
like a facing. Yeah, pocket facing. And
that again covers about 3 to 4 centimeters of the lining. And we're going to post some pictures as well on our Instagram account, stitchingtalespod. So you have to, if you don't have any pattern included for pockets, you will definitely need to draft these facing pieces on your own. It's very simple. You just use first you draw the pocket lining. I will get the pocket lining pieces, and then do just trace a second layer where you add the lining piece. So they follow the side seams and the waist seam. So it's not difficult. I think the only thing, and that's why I always recommend that you go into your wardrobe and check how others have done it already, if you don't have a pre-made pattern, and see maybe how many centimeters is a good idea, because the garment industry has figured this out for you. What's the ideal length of a facing so that it will not show through the lining. So one mistake that I've done myself when I've drafted this is to make the facing pieces a little bit too small. So then you will have the fabric peeking through, and especially if you're using contrasting.
Yeah, especially if you have slanted pockets like on chinos, and I mean, then the pocket bags will automatically open up a little bit, and then the lining might show through so easily. So they are like a golden measurement. They're like not too small, because then it will start to open up and be visible, but not too wide, because that will just create extra bulk and volume.
Yeah, very good. And I'm also holding up a pair of jeans that I've sewn, and the principle is the same here. If you look to any ready-to-made jeans, you will see that if you open the pockets inside, you will see that this is the pocket shield or the pocket facing. It extends a couple of centimeters below the pocket opening, so it won't be visible, but still inside is of course a much lighter fabric, usually some kind of cotton poly mix again. So these are the way that the garment industry do it, and that's the way we should do it as well. I'm a big fan of really adding facing pieces, and my what's the word here? One of my pet peeves is the fact that I'm sure I'm not going to call out everyone here because, but I've sewn a fair amount of pants using commercial sewing patterns, and a lot of the time they do not have this proper construction that we are talking about now, that they have those facing pieces and the pocket lining. Sometimes they want you to just add the pocket lining on the upper without the facing extension, and that will, as you say, on certain type of pants, it's going to cause some issues because it will peek through the lining. Especially the pockets do have a tendency of gaping a little bit also when you wear them. They get a little bit stretched out, a little bit curvy. So even if your sewing pattern do have pockets, you might need to add those facing pieces in order to make it right, in my opinion.
Yeah, and also like because your specific fabric that you have chosen might need it, so you need to be aware of that you might need to do some adjustments based on the type that you are using.
Yeah,
and you just showed a pair of jeans. And those very specific front pockets, like the rounded pockets. If you want to add those kind of pockets to your patterns, one really, really good thing to do then is if you have a front piece without any pockets or anything, and you just draw that rounded front pocket and add pockets back and everything, the pocket opening might actually feel too tight when you wear it. You will have a little bit tricky putting your hands into the pocket, because also like the top stitching around that rounded pocket will also make it a little bit less stretchy. Yeah. So here we usually do the front piece, like the front leg pattern piece, that opening. I will try to draw some pictures and add on our Instagram. So difficult to explain.
Yeah, love it.
But that one is actually like the side seam on the front pocket is actually sticking out like 5 millimeters outside of the side seam, just to create a little bit extra length to the pocket opening. So if it would be like, if you would tape you won't see it on the actual garment, but if you would tape this, like the paper patterns together, the pocket opening would actually stand out a little bit compared to the pocket, and this is just to create a little bit opening, because those trousers are usually, jeans are usually quite tight, so you need that little extra length to the pocket. So this might be a good thing also to have keep in mind if you are working on a pattern that actually doesn't have this little extra length on the side. So you might just want to add that. Super easy to do, of course, also.
What a great tip.
So what a great tip,
little, pro tip.
Way of constructing jeans pattern. Like you want that little extra length to get some space.
That's why you should listen to Stitching Tales podcast, because you will get the pro tips here from Malena that you won't get anywhere else. I mean, I love this, and I agree with you. It's very, as it becomes quite rigid with the top stitching and the double layers of fabric and the seam allowance. So that's a really good tip, because I agree with you. The front pockets is a little bit tricky to get right. And also, again, a tip if you're adding those rounded front pockets is to measure on a pair of pants that already have these, that you have in the wardrobe, to figure out the depth of the pockets and the width of the pockets and the shaping of that round, because someone has already spent so much time figuring this out and replicate it over and over again in the garment industry. So we have to be humble and realize that we have so much to learn from those professionals, because that will just remove so much, annoyance later on when you realize that, oh, why? Okay, but that I can't stuck my hand into now that I close the seam. It's too tight. So there's lots of clues there. You can just pick out your measuring tape and do an inventory on your pockets where you already have pockets.
Absolutely. Yeah, and one other tip is like if you have a slanted pocket, that will be slightly on the bias then and be able to stretch out. You can do the facing then along the grain line instead. So then it will prevent it from being stretched out when you wear it. So again, really, you can take advantage of these kind of things as well. I usually save a little bit of fabric also if the pocket facing is straight instead of slanting. But yeah, mainly prevent it from being stretched out when you wear it.
And another option, which I don't think is as common, but can be sometimes a fashion statement, and sometimes it's very untrendy, is to add patch pockets. And patch pockets are pockets that are not included inside the seam allowance. It's instead added on top of the garment. A common example of patch pocket is the back pockets on jeans, and if you buy a shirt or sometimes t-shirt, they have a front breast pocket. Those are two common examples of patch pockets. And also if you would what do you call when you, I mean my brain today, when you cook, apron, right?
Aprons,
right,
yeah.
This would also a nice, you can add front pockets,
nice detail,
to have and just store things within.
And on jackets it's really common as well.
Totally. So are there instances, Malena, you would say that it's not a good idea to add patch pocket on a garment?
I mean, as we talked in a previous episode on really tight-fitted, stretchy garments, no, I would not do patch pockets like on a pair of leggings. Then I think it would actually be a pretty bad idea. Then it's better to have try to add a pocket inserted in seams instead. But otherwise, on woven fabrics, I mean, yeah, go for it. I don't think there are any restrictions there, to be honest, depending a bit on the fabric. I mean, the thicker fabric you have, the more bulk it's going to create when you turn the seam allowance inside and stitch on top. But I mean, you do that on denim or like jeans, but I'm more thinking of like boucle fabric or something. But I mean, be careful with the finishes, and it won't be a problem, I think.
I agree with you, absolutely. As long as the fabric is reasonably stable and not too tight fitting, I think patch pocket is a wonderful idea. And there are lots of different ways you can do it. You can do them square, you can do them with sharp corners, you can do them rounded. So you have lots of different style options, and they're a good option, especially if you do a garment and sew it and then you realize that, it should be nice to have pockets. And you could do it, and I guess patch pockets is something that isn't super common apart from the ones that we gave examples. It's very common in utility wear. Patch pocket also found on cargo pants. You can find them on the sides of the legs and all over the place. But whereas when we talk a little bit more of a high fashion or more streamlined garments, patch pocket can be perceived as maybe, bringing the garment down a little bit, because I think patch pocket signals functionality, such as apron and cargo pants. So for instance, on a lot of dresses, I think patch pocket might to some signals like art teacher dress or something like that.
I think it gives a little bit more casual look.
Yeah.
Obviously depending on the style, but yeah, it can give a little bit more casual vibe, which is not a bad thing if that's what you go for, of course.
But I think
one technical thing with the patch pocket is when you sew it, like the pocket opening, that could create a lot of stress to the fabric and seam when you are putting in your hands into the pocket. So just maybe you need to reinforce like the shell fabric on the garment. You can use fusible interfacing on the inside on the garment, and do like a proper square then, so the whole seam is like have interfacing that they are sewn through then. You can also do the ending or the start of the seam is just not back and forth, backstitched. It actually goes, I mean, you can look at denims, jeans, you can see it really clearly that they usually have a bar tack there to make it extra durable. Or they could actually make it a little bit decorative stitching, like they have 2 needles, or like at the edge it goes like a triangle. So it makes it extra durable. So because I mean, if you imagine just one straight stitch that is backstitched, that tipping, like the end tipping point, is going to be so easily torn on the actual fabric if you are pulling it. So just be mindful there. If it's just for visual, pockets are not going to be used so much, then sure, it's not as important. But if you actually plan to use your pockets, then just make sure that it is reinforced in some way.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's a very, very good point. And even it can also be a little bit decorative, because I was doing a little bit of research, because in our next upcoming book I am showing how to add like a patch pocket on a t-shirt, for instance, a breast patch pocket. And even though of course that's mostly decorative, you're not really supposed to put a lot of thing in your t-shirt patch pocket, I still see that a lot of ready-to-wear, they do have that extra triangle, as you say, that goes horizontal a little bit in and then stitches down, so that the upper part of the opening has a triangle forming, not double seam all the way, but at least that. So it's a nice feature as well. I mean, I find it actually visually appealing with that extra stitching. It kind of adds interest as well, even when it's not technically necessary.
Yeah, no, it's it looks a little bit extra worked through, basically. I think, but yeah, again, depends really on what type of fabric you're using, and on jeans and trousers in general, it is quite common to have bar tacks also on front pocket openings, if they are like slanted, for example, or back pocket if you have vent pockets or something. The bar tack is usually there for a reason. It's not just a nice detail, it is actually to make it more durable and to make it stronger, basically.
Yeah. So what I'm holding up now, when we talk about bar tacks, in case you don't know, I'm holding up jeans back pockets. It's usually a very narrow, dense zigzag stitch, for instance, that you stitch, and that is reinforces. So you stitch that once you already top stitch the pocket in place, then you add a bar tack, and it can be along the seam or it can be diagonal, as Malena said. You can of course on jeans also add rivets. They form a similar function that they prevent.
To make it extra durable.
Yeah. But those are, so get familiar with bar tacks, because they are very important to learn. And I show that both in my book Sewing Jeans and also in my video course. Then in Mastery I show bar tack techniques and how to utilize them to reinforce pockets in other areas.
Yeah, and if your pattern doesn't have a pocket, but you have other patterns that have pocket, I mean, look how they are done, the sewing techniques on them. You can buy a pattern just also for learning these kind of details, so you can apply them then on your other patterns that maybe doesn't have pockets. So you can obviously use the same techniques on several different patterns and create your own pockets.
Yeah, absolutely, because that brings me, because when I prepare for this podcast, I sometimes go second hand and just buy garments, because I find this have interesting details. And we started this podcast episode talking about inseam pockets, and where the pocket is inside the seam and not slanted. And actually on these dress pants, unfortunately they're black, but I'm going to hold up, they have actually sewn a horizontal bar tack where the pocket opening ends at the lower part. And I think that's pretty brilliant. It's just a centimeter, 3/8 of an inch, a long stitch. That just, because again, when you have those inseam pockets, and it's going to be, pull out your hands and you stress, there will be a lot of stress to that side seam. So adding a little bit of a bar tack on your inseams pockets is probably also a really good idea.
Yeah, and if you don't want to have them visible, you can actually add them on top of the actual side seam, just to reinforce that, or like just go back and forth a couple of times when you are sewing. If you're sewing with a regular home sewing machine, straight stitch, just go back and forth a couple of times. That would also help make it more durable. Yeah,
so definitely do that extra mile when it comes to pockets, so that they will stay as long or perhaps even longer than your actual garment. I think that's a sign of a good constructed pocket made with the right materials, is that you will never have to fix your pocket, because that's so annoying having a pocket break on a garment. And I've definitely bought ready-to-wear garments where I have the pocket lining disintegrate, which is so annoying, and it's really hard to fix. That is a problem. It's really hard to fix broken, and that's usually one of those things that people who don't sew ask me, like, how do I fix this pocket line? And I'm like, it's really hard actually. Once it's like with zippers, it's actually that's not a quick fix. You usually have to rip, a lot of other pieces that you've sewn in order to be able to replace the lining. So definitely do your research and invest in good materials and use the right techniques. And depending on the pocket, you can do Hong Kong finishes where you add like a binding instead of overlocking the edges, or you can do a French seam. If you have a lot of like rounded corners, it's tricky, but if you have more straight corners, you can do Hong Kong finishes, French seams. Yeah, but I'm holding up now on the jeans, exactly. Right, where the French seam is where it's the stitch is sewn, the pocket or whatever seems sewn twice, so that means that the seam allowance is enclosed in the second seam, which is again a great option if you're using a lightweight fabric, because it just adds, it's such a nice finish, and also doesn't add much bulk because you do not overcast it as well, because usually the fabric is enough with the two stitching to keep it from fraying. So you can really play around with this, and with Hong Kong finishes maybe use a contrast binding or a decorative binding to get it detailed. Then if you do that, maybe it's more suitable for loose fitted garment like jacket or something, because that will create a little bit extra bulk since you had more fabric. But you could get really nice finishings with these techniques. Yeah, we're going to post some pictures definitely on the inside as well if you haven't watching the video version. We definitely recommend you go over to our Instagram account stitchingtalespod as well and check out some examples that we have talked about in this podcast. It gets always a little bit abstract when we talk about this stuff, but I know that all of you listening are probably sewing as well, so you can kind of visualize what we're talking about, even if you only have us in the ears and not seeing us as well talk about these things. I really like this topic, and I hope that we have gave you some guidance on how to add pockets the right way if your pattern lacks them, and more pocket to the people, I would say, right, Malena? I was gonna say the exact same thing. You are. That's so funny. Yes, definitely more pocket to the people. All right then. Thank you so much for listening. I am Johanna Lundström, and you find me over at theloststitch.com, where you can learn more about my sewing books, sewing patterns, and of course my sewing video courses. My name is Malena Hjerpe, and you can find me at hazelhenpatterns.com or at Instagram at Hazelhen Patterns. So nice to chat with you today. Yeah, loved it. Bye bye. Bye bye.